I'm in a pinch, so I'm going to be all over the place today. I've got a funny story to tell you, then I've got to make a point to you, and then we're going to just do a few snippets of royal news. But I'm in a pinch, been all over the place. You'll find out where I was last night, and I've just spent the morning. It's actually a good feeling because it's just past the tax year here in the UK, and I've just had my accountant email me my tax return. I've signed it off and it's all done. That is such a nice feeling, isn't it, my dear? You know, when you've done your spring cleaning, you've done your accounts, and you can relax for the weekend. So that's where we are. Might be a bit of a hodgepodge, my dears, but you know, it is what it is. I've got a rather embarrassing story to share with you guys. Embarrassing for me, but I'm sure quite amusing for you. It involves my ring. Do you remember in the last video, we spoke about the royal gemstones, royal rings, and I was wearing for the video one of my favourites from my costume collection, my orange ring on the gold band. That's simple, because I really loved the colour of it. It was only a costume ring. I think I got it from Secondhand Susie at the Vintage Fair. And I wore it for the video. Usually I wear it on my pinky finger, and it's always a little bit loose on that one and a bit too tight for this finger, which is where I prefer to wear them, on the fourth finger. But I squeezed it on over the knuckle. I thought, oh, that feels a bit tight, but I'm sure I'll be able to get it off. I couldn't get it off. Dear. So I kept wearing it as I was editing the video, and then, you know, I'd have a go at getting it off and it wouldn't work. And I googled all the ways, you know, winding tape and dental floss and ribbon around your finger and trying to usher it off and lubricate proceedings, and nothing was working. And every time I tried to pull it off, my finger then began swelling up because it hurt to try and get it past the knuckle. I didn't really think anything of it. I thought, I'm sure it'll come off eventually. I can submerge my hand in cold water. I tried all the tricks, dear. It wasn't working. And then bedtime approached, and it was not painful at all, apart from the times when I tried to wiggle it off. And then it did start swelling again. It wasn't painful. But then, you know, you start Googling around and you start hearing stories about, you know, fingers going black and then falling off. And I know it sounds dramatic, but it got to a stage where I thought, you know what? I'm not comfortable going to bed. I wasn't going to be able to sleep with the anxiety of it because it was slightly swollen, and I thought I want to be able to monitor it. And if I do fall asleep, I won't be able to monitor it, and I might wake up and I'll have a black finger. So I decided I'm going to go to A&E. This was at midnight. It was approaching midnight. And I thought, this is the last thing I need. You know, I'll be queuing up there for ages. I had an electric shock in the last year or two when I had to go to A&E fairly late. And I remember I had to queue up for, you know, an hour, 2 hours maybe. And then you go through all the documents. I really don't want this, but I do want to keep my finger. So thankfully, throughout my Googling, I found on a forum a fireman who said, always go to your fire station as the first point of call. We're used to it, we see it all the time, and we can get it off for you quickly. So, with great humiliation, I called up the fire service to check that I could come in, and they were very nice and said I could. So I took a Uber to the fire station. This gigantic orange ring, and I was really dreading going in there because, you know, I think it must be my subconscious bias, as they call it these days. We all know that fire people and servicemen are heroes, and I've never had any doubt about that. But I was expecting, you know, to be greeted with, if not amusement, then some disdain, because, you know, they're supposed to be doing important work. And what have they got? Some princess walking in there with a giant orange ring that can't come off. You know, I was really dreading it. But I needn't have worried. My dear, I haven't shown you the ring, have I? It's in two pieces. Can you see there? It was such a lovely experience. I could have stayed there all night, my dear. I had 5 of them. There were 5 firemen. I had them all to myself. And I've got to tell you, they were hot. Oh, my dears, they were hot. I mean, talk about extinguishing a fire. My pussy was on fire, my dear. I mean, I needed my fan on me. I had a fire to put out. No word of a lie. There were 5 of them. I think they ranged from about 25 to 55, all the age groups. They were hot. I think they'd been lounging around bored. They said they weren't doing anything. It looked like they'd been working out, a couple of them, and they were so lovely, so attentive to me. Seriously. I mean, I couldn't admire our emergency services more. I think they're all absolutely brilliant, and they were so royal to me. And all they had to do was bring out a ring-cutting device. I'd actually already Googled it myself, and I thought maybe I should, because they sell them on Amazon, but this was a proper weapon of substance, you know, and it sort of went through the ring like butter, really. It didn't take very long. And they made 2 cuts so that it came apart into 2 pieces, and there it was. But you know what, my dears, one of the reasons I'm sharing this with you is because I don't often offer advice, because you never know where it's going to land. This is really good advice, because even though I thought I was going over the top, they said, no, you did exactly the right thing. People can harm themselves if they allow it to swell up. And I had a deep imprint where the ring was, even though it hadn't been painful. I had a deep imprint that lasted until the next morning, and it had made my finger very stiff. You know, it took a while for movement to come back. Thankfully it did. Everything is fine now. There's no swelling. They said I did exactly the right thing. And, you know, it's a little known remedy for it. Fire service, not A&E. And it happens a lot to a lot of people, and people will live with it for a long time. Luckily, of course, this ring wasn't an expensive part of my collection. It was just a little trinket, really, so no harm done. So I don't need any advice about repairs or anything, my dears. Second-hand Susie will sort me out with something similar, I'm sure. Wow, that is a tongue twister, isn't it? Second-hand Susie will sort me out with something similar, I'm sure. Try saying that 10 times. So if it happens to you or one of your loved ones, don't wait, don't put it off. Head for a fireman, my dear. Or a firewoman, fireperson, I should say. These all happen to be guys, but they were so lovely. I was actually really touched by the way they were with me. Can you imagine, my dear, River hammering on the door of the fire station at midnight? My ring needs attention. My ring's too tight. They couldn't have been lovelier. They could not have been lovelier. I can't get over it. You know, when something really touches you, and it'll always stick with me, the kindness they showed me. We had a real laugh, and I could have stayed there and partied all night, dear. I might go back. Thank you so much for leaving me lots of nice comments about your favourite rings. I haven't read all of them yet, but I'm devoting some time this weekend to do so. But I got the general feeling that Camilla's was your favourite ring. And I said that mine was Beatrice's. But yes, I do actually agree with you. I always think of these things when I'm editing, but yes, I do think that all told, Camilla's was my favourite as well. So I do agree with you, but I just meant for me, I don't think that particular cut would work. It's erring too much on the feminine side, believe it or not, for me. But it is divine, I think, Prince Charles' taste in that ring, as many of you said. If it was indeed his notion, was second to none. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous ring, but I just meant, for me, for everyday wear, I'd have to pump for Beatrice's. Now, this was an interesting story. One of our popular presenters, Eamonn Holmes here, does a morning show on GB News, and 400 viewer complaints were received by Ofcom because he had made a joke and said, you know, he's not a big fan of the Harkles, my dear. He's on our side with regards to that kind of thing, but he said, why wouldn't the royal family just throw Harry over the balcony and Meghan with him? Or words to that effect, you know, I'm paraphrasing. But he basically said, throw him off the balcony and throw Meghan off too. Well, of course. I can't imagine why GB News viewers would complain, because most of them would have been in agreement with Mr. Holmes. But obviously there's been, shall we say, organisation offline to make complaints about such a harmless joke, because all of us know that it was just a joke. You know, it's what we've been talking about lately, isn't it? With freedom, liberty. You know, you're not allowed to make jokes like that anymore. You know, chuck him off the balcony. So, I mean, to most of us who are civilised and sensible, we would understand. That's a joke. Do we really need to go around complaining? He obviously doesn't really mean to incite violence to chuck the Harkles off a balcony. It's obvious. I mean, what kind of cretins are these people? But it did remind me, you see, of the time when I defended And I have to say, this was quite an unpopular opinion with you guys, but thankfully most of you received the fact that I have a different opinion with grace. Some don't. But I defended Eamonn Rajan when he was getting lots of abuse for his old Twitter that was uncovered, where he said, "Oh, I'm sitting here watching Kate and William, and I want to throw bricks at them," which evidently meant, he said he wanted. I took it as meaning he wanted to throw bricks at the television set he was watching. But either way, it was obviously a joke that he was sharing with somebody on Twitter years before he became a media editor or whatever he is at the BBC. Now he's something fancy. Well, I defended him at the time, and I stand by that defence because, it offended loads of Kate and William fans, of which I'm a huge one of those, But I couldn't understand why. To my mind, it was quite obviously a joke. He obviously doesn't want to really incite violence, and anybody that thought that he did has got a screw loose. They've got a screw loose, just like people have got a screw loose who are going the other way now and complaining about Eamonn Holmes making a joke about Harry. So I just thought it was interesting because everybody at the time made a big hoo-ha about Eamonn Rajan, But none of those people, I'm guessing, are making quite the same fuss about Mr. Holmes and his comments about Harry. So I just say to those few people, can you now see what my point was about Eamonn Rajan having the right to crack a joke, even if it besmirches those that we might like? Because if you've got to take these jokes literally, then throwing the Harkles off a balcony is a lot more violent than just chucking bricks. Kate and William, off that balcony at the palace, that would be certain death rather than just a few injuries by the bricks. If you're going to take jokes that literally, then Mr. Holmes was more incendiary than Mr. Rajan. Do you understand? Sometimes the point needs to be illustrated in this kind of way. Well, we didn't see this one coming. Girl power, ahoy! Oh yes, they've been called the Dream Team, Catherine and Anne. Such royal names together is very nice. Who'd have thought that they would complement each other so very well? Well, I expect most of us would have thought that because they're both lovely. But they really did make a really gorgeous and elegant pairing, I thought, when they made their first joint engagement together. They opened a new headquarters at the Royal College of Obs and Gynae. And they were showered with bouquets and nosegays. So, if you were to read and believe everything the press say, then the little bairns don't have much care for the royals. But they all look enchanted, they all look delighted and captivated, and they're getting memories that they'll be able to carry with them throughout their whole life, They spoke of the need for more experienced midwives and medical teams for prospective midwives. And the Princess Royal has been patron of the Royal College of Midwives for 20 years, And she totally surprised medics. I mean, this is so totally Anne. I can't believe it, although it is rather candid of her. But she surprised medics. She recalled her fears of a time when she was pregnant with one of the two bairns. When she was pregnant, she recalled a time when she fell over and one of these babes in utero became stuck on the wrong side. And you know how it happened? She tripped over while in the back of a horse lorry. I shouldn't laugh, should I? I mean, it sounds extremely scary, but that is just so Anne, isn't it? Of all the places she had to trip over, and to be honest with you, I didn't even know that could make a baby or a fetus twist and get stuck in the wrong position. My dear, things prospective mothers have to go through are very scary, but wow. But yes, she would be, of all places, wouldn't she? Either in a stable, on a horse, or, no, in the back of a horse van. So, totally Anne. She looked so elegant in blue, and Catherine looked gorgeous in a sort of oatmeal colour, wasn't it? The dress was by a brand called Self Portrait. I think it goes for about £400. It's a crepe midi dress. And that belted jacket she's got on has lovely lace detail there, which I thought was rather exquisite. And that single pearl drop necklace was just divine. I loved the classic hairdo, very long, very sleek. Oh, and just yesterday the Princess Royal also formally accepted the role of Colonel-in-Chief of the Intelligence Corps, a role that was previously held by her father, the Duke of Edinburgh. Now this really made my day. Really made my day. Don't write off the Queen yet. Do not write off the Queen yet. How gorgeous does she look in these new pictures? She ditched her walking stick for them. Ditched them. She's probably been reading all these headlines. She's frail, she's failing, she's fading, she's vanishing. She needs protection. Well, look at this gorgeous woman. Isn't she just a fondant fancy? She is so gorgeous. I love her. And those clear eyes. Have you ever seen such clarity in the eyes of a woman, let alone a 96-year-old woman? She is just gorgeous. The strong teeth, and they are her own. The strong teeth, the strong eyes, the glowing skin, the thick white shock of hair. She's just a treat to look at. Look at that grin! Look at that expression! Can you ever imagine anything more endearing? And she's in her blue paisley dress, which I thought was lovely with the 3 strands of pearls. And this was an audience in the Oak Room at Windsor Castle. She was with the President of Switzerland. The state opening of Parliament's coming up in a couple of weeks. People are hoping she can attend, but you can't take anything for granted. They're going to go with that method of seeing how she is on the day and taking it from there, not making any promises, but we hope to see her there. But yes, talking about all that controversy with Eamonn Holmes and the BBC, bit of friction with the royal family giving their Christmas special to ITV, those months ago, raised a few eyebrows to see the Cornwalls celebrating with the BBC, but that is the duty of royalty, you see, and the grace. It was the BBC's 90th anniversary of their BBC World Service. And Charles paid tribute to the journalists who are working, or alleged to be working, to ensure that the public has the impartial truth. And many of us have had our issues with the BBC over the last few years because they've become very left-wing, very, very wokey, all going in that direction, the same as the rest of them. But I am one of those that does hope that something can be salvaged. I hear that they're going to abolish the licence fee because people aren't bothering to pay it these days because they're so hacked off with BBC and watching other devices, going to other devices for their entertainment. But they're going to find other methods of funding for what I hear. But I will say I do hope something can be salvaged because I do have a soft spot for the BBC. I grew up with them and I like having a national broadcaster. I do think these things unify a nation, and so many of our institutions and even people that unify a nation and come together and make it a strong fabric are vanishing and disappearing. So I think it's something worth holding on to before everything is so very disparate and deconstructed and disenfranchised. I don't know. I think it's worth holding on to if impartiality can be reintroduced into the fold, So I appreciated their presence there. They both look gorgeous. Prince Charles in his pinstripes this time with a lovely pocket square, and Camilla looking quite sexy in her blues. And they've agreed to buy adoring crowds as well outside Broadcasting House. Adored! And afterwards Charles headed to a community centre for refugees, asylum seekers and migrants. So as you can see here, here's our xenophobic, racist, bigoted, prejudiced King to-be who has so many concerns about the colour of a ginger man and a cafe au lait skinned pairing. So many concerns. Was it Charles or was it Anne or was it Camilla or who was it? Katie and Willie? I don't know, but they have so many concerns of what the colour's going to be of that complexion when it emerges. Don't believe those media depictions that you see about all other cultures and races and creeds holding disdain for royalty and the Cornwalls, because as you can see here, there is a jolly atmosphere of mutual respect. And I thought this story was very interesting regarding our Eugenie, Princess Eugenie. And it just goes to show the unsung works, do and have always done, because, I haven't spoken about it yet. I might do, but it bores me. But the Wessexes, Sophie and Edward, have been doing their Caribbean tour, and as expected, there were a few protests. Although I've got to say, the protest I saw involved 15 people in a country that has a population of over 100,000. So, we're talking 15 people making protests, and they have the right to protest. But all of these places, former colonies coming, they want reparations, they want money. They want money to make amends for slavery, even though no former slaves are still alive. So some of us have a little bit of a problem with that, or we feel if there was to be some kind of atonement, then, as I suggested in a recent video, why don't we look at modern slavery now? Why don't we look at, because it's a huge affair, and I'm getting ahead of myself. The point is, Princess Eugenie has been working on this. She's launched a new podcast called Floodlight in collaboration with an old school chum of hers, Julia de Boinville. Or Boinville, I'm not quite sure, but Julia. It's going to feature guests, including famous ones, who are helping to combat modern slavery. It really wants to shine a light on that. Do bear in mind, this is going to spring up, and I know she's going to get criticism because people are going to say, oh, what about your father? He's just been done for sex trafficking, which he hasn't. There's been no criminal case against him. But, the civil trial, they're going to be throwing that at her. And they're also going to be accusing her of jumping on a bandwagon. Well, no, she initiated this in 2018, I think it was. So this is before all of the BLM movement, before it became quite so much of a public issue. This goes back to 2012 when she made a visit to India herself and she met trafficked women in Kolkata. And in 2017 she co-founded the Anti-Slavery Collective. This is 2017, way before it became the fashionable thing. She was always working towards it, and this is not a particularly senior royal, this is Princess Eugenie. They've always been doing this. They've always been making amends, if you want to put it that way, for the former machinations, shall we say, of the British Empire. They've always had an eye to it. We've always, throughout the Commonwealth, had an attitude of embracing. But they want to raise awareness. Apparently it's a $150 industry, second only to the arms trade, as the fastest growing form of international crime. And it's what I've said before. All these politicians in the Caribbean islands are the ones that want reparations, and the Jamaican government. It would be very interesting to have a rifle through everything that they own and see how much of it is derived from modern slavery. Does that not count? Does that not count, even though it's bigger than it ever was before? And because you don't see them, because they're hidden from view, does it not count because there are various different complexions rather than one specific one? And this isn't to diminish the slavery that went on during the British Empire or all the other empires. It's not about diminishing one and making a fuss over the other, but it's more about asking the question of what can we do now for slaves that exist now, and to look at the industry itself, who is supported, I'm pretty sure, by many of these people as individuals and as nations who are getting on their high horse and having a sort of holier-than-thou attitude about slavery. So this is about awareness, it's about spotting the signs of modern slavery, and usually says once we understand how slavery connects to our lives, we start realising that it is actually the clothes we wear, it is the food we eat, the items we buy, and the services we purchase. So I thought that was rather interesting food for thought. That's all I've got for you today, my darlings. Thank you so much for jumping in to hang out with me. It was a treat to see you, and I'll see you very soon. Leave me a juicy comment. I'm going to be trying to go through as many as I can this weekend and catch up. And if you'd like to treat me to a coffee for the weekend, my tip jar is in the description box below. And lots of love to you all. Cheerio now.